A college football tradition like no other.
Yes, sirree, boys and girls.
Or a guy that just won't leave.
Wow, that is sad.
The Dave Hooker Show. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Back to Dave Hooker.
He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Good morning. Eastern 10 o'clock start each and every weekday. Kudos to the peeps that are already on board. We love that. Today's tough question coming up. Also, Duke continues to whine, and Jarek Gibson, a very talented tailback, weighs in on the Vols on our YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed yet, I don't know what to tell you, because we're going to add recruiting interviews. We're going to add our Celebrate 98 series with former Vols and coaches from the 1998 National Championship team. And you'll always get Jacob Warren and Cooper Mays, and the way that Caleb dices up the videos to give you what you want to hear about it, I would say is Edward Scissorhands-esque. Pretty good compliment there, isn't it? You didn't think you'd get an Edward Scissorhands right off the bat. That's probably before your time, though.
No, I know the movie. There's a Family Guy joke of, because he's supposed to fall in love. How does Edward Scissorhands get physical with people he loves?
I don't know. Totally weird movie. I can go down the road of Once Upon a Time in a Galaxy far, far away, and I know you can go the Harriet Potter things, but there's some
Harriet Potter.
What did I say?
You said
Harriet. My bad. But there's some things that can just lose me, and that was one of those movies. Dune was the other two. I couldn't make the leap of faith in Dune back in the day.
I never watched Dune, so I can't.
You're missing 3 hours of totally confusing stuff with no action. It's kind of like Star Wars on a very tight budget.
Oh, okay. I do love Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Although someone pointed out,
but not on a tight budget.
Someone pointed out to me it's the most acclaimed movie, and I always thought it was the best, which is Empire Strikes Back.
No question.
But if you really think about it, Empire Strikes Back is great because the beginning and the end is really strong. Not a lot happens in the middle of that movie.
Nah, that's fair. That's fair. You don't have a garbage crusher scene that you had in the first one, or episode 4, I guess, that you needed. All right, we've got stuff to get to. If you don't bounce out of bed when you're a sports talk show host talking about Tennessee, I don't know what's wrong with you, because they've got everything going on. They've got, of course, the Sweet 16 against Duke, and you guys really hate Duke, don't you? Videos that we put up on YouTube, we love it when we get to 1,000 views or more, but usually that takes a couple of days. Not with your hatred of Duke. You really hate Duke, Tennessee fans, so kudos. Be united in that. I love it. If you haven't clicked on the subscribe button yet, please do that. Give me a thumbs up as well. Smoky Mountain Red says, good morning, and I'm back from cruising. Oh, he cruised? That's nice. So my daughter wants to go on a cruise again. I was like, did you want to pay for it? So we'll get to that. So welcome back from cruising, but we are worldwide. I just want to say that. And let me get your thoughts on, Caleb, the Lady Vols before we dive into some football stuffs.
All right. Well, yeah, let's start with the Lady Vols. They won last night. They are going back to the Sweet 16. I guess the question becomes, they won 94-47. I know it was against a 12 seed, but the question now becomes, has Kelly Harper done enough she's done more than enough to keep her job now. Remember we talked about she might be on the hot seat 2 months ago. Has she done enough to earn a contract extension, Dave? That's the real question at this point. Should Tennessee open up the checkbook for her, or is, given the expectations of the Lady Vols, does more need to be done this year?
Well, if we're going to ask that question, we've got to take out the gray area, because I could tell you that you would have gray area of contract minutia that would say she does or does not get a full buyout if she were to be fired. So we're assuming that it's all in for the point of this exercise. Let's say that. So I think you have to do it in recruiting. If you're definitely in for another year or two, you've got to tell everybody in the college basketball world that you're actually in for 4 or 5, because without recruiting, it's going to be pretty difficult. to build a program, and I don't think you would ask Kelly Harper to do that. So I have no problem with the contract. I have no problem with an extensive contract. I would like to protect myself on the back end if I'm Tennessee, because I've still got questions about Kelly Harper. But what do you think? Throw her a big contract now to make sure you don't lose her? Is she that good enough where you're worried about that, Caleb?
No, I don't think you're worried about losing her. I think because one, it's not like she would leave or anywhere. She's a Tennessee coach through and through. I think what you're worried about more is you're more worried about will you need to fire her one day, because that's still not confirmed. But I'm with you. Look, Tennessee's got a lot of money. The school's got a lot of money. Lady Vols, women's basketball. I don't know if it's a revenue generator, but it probably doesn't operate at as much of a loss as other women's basketball programs do. That's
True.
my guess. And so I think at the very least you can give her a 4-year deal so she can't be recruited against, if that makes sense. I mean, because just chatter of firing a coach can oftentimes kill their recruiting. You saw that with Fulmer. Just the chatter that he was on the hot seat in like 2007, and he won the East that year, but chatter that he had lost the program, that wrecked the 2008 recruiting class more than anything else.
Yeah, I'd squash that right now. And I don't know. Flightline says lock her up to a lifetime contract. I don't know that I would go that far, but it would definitely be 5 years. She would feel protected, that she's able to build a program. And then their recruiting class next year, Caleb.
Yeah, their recruiting class would do a lot more for them in terms of recruiting.
Yeah.
I know that they were struggling in recruiting earlier in the year. I haven't checked recently how they're doing, to be fair.
Give me a glance on that, because I'd be interested to see the direction of the program, because I think that Kelly Harper's like a lot of other coaches right now. I think she's a very good coach that needs very good talent. I think Pat Summitt was a very, very excellent elite coach that could coach even subpar talent, but she could recruit at such a high level that wasn't a conversation that we had very often. So go ahead and click that thumbs up button, the like button, and let's take a look at that class for the Lady Vols next year. It's brought to you by Craft Treats. Go to crafttreats.com, and they've got the CBD infused pet treats that can handle your pet's digestive issues. They can also handle, the arthritis issues. My dog's so much better, and anxiety issues with the CBD infused pet treats. And use the promo code Off the Hook for 20% off the hook, and you can get holistic, fantastic dog treats, non-CBD as well. The promo code Off the Hook gets you 20% off at crafttreats.com. Yes.
Yeah. So having pulled this up, I thought so. I knew it was back in November, and it's still an issue. She still has no commitments for 2023, which is a problem. But the roster was full this year. Every player had a scholarship. Tamari Key got hurt and is coming back. Rakia Jackson just announced she's coming back. So the team's still going to be pretty deep next year. I think Jordan Horston will probably go to the WNBA, and I wouldn't blame her for that. But let me ask you that with NIL money. Yeah, I mean, technically Horston has a year of eligibility because of the 2019-20, the COVID year, not counting against your scholarship. And you're right. Tennessee and UConn, I feel like, in South Carolina, NIL probably makes you more valuable in college than WNBA, doesn't it? And
yes.
Yeah, so you're right. Horston might come back, and that could be a big benefit for them. What it's really seeming to look like now is Harper stacked the roster at the beginning of the year and brought in a bunch of new talent. And the hope as a Tennessee fan, you'll find out when they play Virginia Tech at 6:30 Saturday evening, who's a number 1 seed, who beat them in Knoxville earlier in the year. Your hope as a Tennessee fan is that they had not fully gelled yet early in November or December. Women's college basketball is not like men's college basketball. We talk about in the past John Calipari's ability to get his players to mesh very early on in the year as a bunch of freshmen. But a lot of the great teams you're playing are young too in men's college basketball. Women's college basketball, the best teams still typically have 3-4-year players on there. And because, like you said, there's no reason to go early to the WNBA.
No, they make about an average of $102,000 among the 151 athletes. So if you want to factor that in, there probably a lot of them are making just around $40,000 or $50,000. And not to mention, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's going to feel a lot like the minor leagues in minor league baseball when you show up. I mean, you're not going to be treated like a king or queen like you are with the Lady Vols. So there's going to be a couple of players that are going to leave programs like UConn or South Carolina or Tennessee that are going to realize, oh, whoa, I got treated better in college. I had like a place I could go eat at any time of the day and get a filet or shrimp or whatever I wanted. And now I'm cooking ravioli in my little Residence Inn suite. There's a big difference between those two things. I'm going to go ahead and even go all in more than you, Caleb. You said it, which kind of keyed me off. They've got the money. Give her a 5-year contract. Tell her that the NIL money is going to be behind it. And I don't want to hear this excuse that I gave you 6 months ago, and that was NIL is going to be based off market value. What are you worth? And the simple fact is a starter on Tennessee's football team, Cooper Mays, Jacob Warren, they're worth more than a star on the Lady Vols. And that may sound crazy, but that's how the market is going to look at it and dictate it. But since I made that argument in early fall, Caleb, what have we seen? We've seen the NCAA loosen restrictions that the school can now get involved. So the school now needs to be involved, particularly with programs like UConn and the Lady Vols that have a strong, loyal fan following, and funnel some cash money to some of these ladies. They deserve it. And you're right. You minimize the loss when you do an itemized budget. They used to, Caleb, when I used to dig into budgets, they lose about $1 million a year. The football team, just kind of CYA, would write them a check. So they would say they could break even. One of the few schools that broke even. I don't know what the situation is now, but if you minimize that loss and you have a championship team, that's a 2.5-hour commercial on ESPN for Tennessee. I'm digging in because I don't think they can replace her with anybody significantly better that I know of.
Yeah, you're right. That's very true. It's the landscape for women's basketball is a little bit harder to find the right coach. Now, Danny White is probably the guy. If anybody could find a great coach, it would be Danny White because I trust Danny White all the time. But I think funny enough, Vols and Lady Vols are both in a similar spot here, and they're both in the Sweet 16, which is that they both have coaches that you're relatively happy with, and you think to yourself, it's possible you could get a better coach, but is it worth it? Is it the 80-20 rule? Are you sacrificing the 80 for the 20 that you're missing, if that makes sense? And that's
again, we have to factor in, are these revenue sports or not?
Yes.
So, I mean, to me, I would, if there's a 20% chance of getting a better coach for the Lady Vols, and you're saying there's an 80% chance of not, is that the 80-20 rule? Stick with what you got? Then I'm sticking with what I got. Same thing for Rick Barnes. Obviously, the same thing for Josh Heupel. But you're talking to the person who said they should fire Jeremy Pruitt the day after the Georgia State game. And I said that, and they had me on national radio, and I hung on for a little bit longer, and they made fun of me about it. But I was dead serious. That was not a clickbait thing. If you're not established by that time, we know. Okay, yeah. That was what, his third year, Caleb?
It was his second, but it wasn't like a disaster of a set. I think usually by second year, oftentimes, with coaches, a lot of times.
Yeah, he wouldn't have gotten back on the bus. He wouldn't have been allowed back in his office after the Georgia State game, if it were me. So I'm not afraid to pull the trigger quickly. Don't get me wrong. I just wouldn't. I think you've got yourself suddenly in a situation that we were criticizing just a few months ago and got a ton of clicks. We just asked the question, Kelly Harper, should she be on the hot seat? Now we're sitting here and having the exact opposite discussion where I would totally keep her and I would go out of my way to keep her.
I mean, I think right now I'm with you. I'm with you right now. And there's some good points, that Tennessee wasn't at full strength when they last played Virginia Tech. Look, there's a path to the Final Four for Tennessee this year. They haven't been since they won the national title in 2008. And I mean, I know reaching the Final Four in women's basketball is not the same as men, but there's more competition. So there's something to be said when you reach the Final Four.
Well, and you just completely have to take out the Pat Summitt comparisons. That is gone. That's like comparing a preacher down the road to good old JC or God. I mean, it's just, those are two different things, two different levels. So you can't do that. And that's just the way you're going to have to look at it from now on. Let's talk some football as the Vols open spring practice. It's 4 Downs, brought to you by Andy Mason of AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
Four
Downs, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience in that office. It's phenomenal. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. You'll love it. Best prices, best service in Knoxville. Don't cost yourself thousands or tens of thousands of dollars if you need a home or to sell a home in Knoxville. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. 4 downs. Here we go. First down. This is according to Josh Heupel. Quote, the new guys, the young guys we've added, length, athleticism, size on the offensive and defensive line, much deeper than we've been. Skill spots, same thing, which is really never an issue with what they were able to turn out of those in 21 and 22. Depth, no longer an issue. Yay or nay, Caleb Calhoun? What say you?
I'm actually going to say yay. I think the bigger issue is how good the actual starters at different positions are. But in terms of being able to go deep, can you go deep with solid players? Yes. Now, who's good? That's a different story. But you can at least go deep with solid players, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you're telling me its depth is no longer an issue in year 3, headed into year 3?
I don't think it's an issue. I think the bigger issue is how good your starters are, not how much of an issue your depth is. Great example.
Oh, I see your point. So, in other words, for instance, they don't have a fantastic set of corners, but they've got 8 people who can play in the defensive backfield.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, gotcha.
Exactly. I mean, the best example was, do you remember the 2007 Tennessee team? It was 2007. Had a decent amount of depth at wide receiver after Robert Meacham left, but they didn't have anybody who could do what Robert Meacham could do. And that was a problem.
No, let me split it up a little bit. So he specifically mentioned, Josh Heupel did, the offensive and defensive line. I like their depth there and their athleticism. The secondary is really the only one I would still have a question mark about, to be honest with you. And that's the one I cited randomly. But yeah, when I broke down their offensive line and defensive line, you're not going to know all the names nowadays in this NIL world. But I think the 2 that they brought in on the offensive line are really good. I think on the defensive line, where we thought they were going to take all these transfers in because guys left with Pruitt, I think what you're seeing is they're taking guys that physically fit their style. I think you're seeing long, athletic guys that are going. If you haven't checked out the defensive line preview, please go to offthehooksports.com, because I think they've got 6 guys. Now, when you take an Omari Thomas, he is naturally a defensive tackle. And some of these guys are naturally defensive tackles or edge rushers. But there's also a lot of guys, Caleb, in this day and age that are versatile, that could probably play both. And that's where the game's going. And I think that's pretty scary for Tennessee's opposition.
Yeah, I think Josh Heupel, I've talked about this for a while. He has he's gone for this. I know it's the phrase is different type of technique, defensive linemen, but I just call them hybrid defensive ends. I feel like is the best way to say it. They look like they're defensive ends, but they can line up at defensive tackle. Dominic Bailey really fits that mold. Caleb Tremblay did 2 years ago. Jaquan Blakely. They didn't really have that last year as much. I think Latrell Bumpus did some of that, but these are guys that they stay on the line no matter what. They're not necessarily edge rushers like Byron Young or Tyler Baron who can play off the line. They stay on the line their hands always down. But they could line up in the middle or at the end when they're doing it. And I think that's I think why you saw a lot of the principles from Jeremy Pruitt's 3-4 to Tim Banks' 4-3 didn't really change that much, if that makes sense. And a lot of times the principles don't change that much anyway. It's just, is one guy having his hand up or down?
Right. And listen, everybody says something smart. I remember Jeremy Pruitt saying that and me thinking, well, that's a good point. It really doesn't matter if your hand's up or down nowadays. And you had Derek Dooley bringing up VFL, so that stuck. That still bothers me, VFL. I hate that term. And the only reason is because Derek Dooley made it up.
I mean, I know you got some issues with Derek Dooley on certain things. I don't think Derek Dooley did everything right. I also think Derek Dooley just kind of cracked under some pressure because I think there was a lot of things going wrong with Tennessee that time that were not his fault, to be fair.
Very fair. Okay, so let's get to third down. Third down is...
Oh, wait, are we doing second down?
Oh, we forgot second down.
Yeah.
Second down, Joe Milton can play at an elite level, but competition is open. That according to Josh Heupel. And Nico is extremely coachable. So, but he started with the fourth team yesterday. Technically, he took fourth team snaps. I read zero into that. I'm not even going to ask the question. You just go out there and you're a freshman on the first day, maybe even the first week, you take the last set of snaps. That's just how things work. But I think that it's probably too early to know much about Joe Milton. I'll just tell you what I'm told by people on the inside. Nico is every bit the player to push Joe Milton to keep him from being at all lackadaisical and realize that he can be the next Anthony Richardson in this upcoming draft cycle. That's what I've been told. That Nico is every bit enough to push him, if not more, and that Joe has responded very well to that, and everybody thinks he will continue to, Caleb. But Nico is not your fourth-string quarterback.
No, he's not. I mean, the only person who, and again, you're right, it's because he's a freshman. All Josh Heupel has to go on right now is what he did playing high school ball and maybe practicing with the team in the winter, but he was still preparing for that Polynesian Bowl at the time. So almost nothing to go on. Only Dennis Dodd has information about Nico as a quarterback at the college level, and because he's seen something that nobody else has.
I feel pretty confident on my information about Nico. So I don't want to be confused with knowing more about Nico than anybody, but I will tell you that I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. So
I'm waiting for Dennis Dodd to write that him being fourth string is evident that he's not like ready to play.
Yes, that he's fourth string, not ready to play. Some redheaded hooker is propping him up, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. I like Dennis Dodd. I can handle him. All right. In this third down, all offensive linemen have position flexibility, alluding that they can play either left or right side. All right. If I start to twitch at any point, Caleb, just go ahead and call me out and say, Dave, are you okay? Because this to me is just weird. It's kind of Clausen-like, Dave Clausen-like, that you would play people on the left and right. But goodness gracious, they did it with Darnell Wright. He played a whole season at left, and they move him to right. They're going to do the same thing with Crawford and Mincy. And that's the way things are going to go. And that's the way they run their program. And based off success, I can say nothing. But it is weird to me that an offensive lineman who relies so much on footwork plays both sides of the offensive line. It's just weird to old-fashioned old Dave. But I got to remember that everybody on Tennessee's coaching staff, offensive coaching staff, is younger than me. So I'm the old guy in the room.
I think one of the differences is, and you're actually seeing this with NFL. I don't know if you've noticed in the past 10 years, once the advent of the spread came, a lot of NFL GMs were taking defensive linemen and converting them to offensive linemen because, and Heupel doesn't run a spread. I'm not saying that, but offensive linemen and spread formations are not taught to maintain blocks. All they're taught to do is just direct players a certain way, if that makes sense. And look, during the Fulmer years, it was old-fashioned in this way. And I mean, look, whatever we can say about Fulmer, he was a superb line coach. And he always had good line coaches. I mean, he had Mike Berry for a few years. I mean, he just had some really good offensive line coaches. And they were taught to maintain blocks. And I think that is where you get into a habit playing one side. Heupel's offense, you've talked about this. One, you can block downfield now, which was not a thing back in the day. You're taught more to, it's kind of a quick hit, force him a certain way, and then pick up another guy. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And I don't think footwork, when you're not running the ball as often, when you're zone blocking and you're not man on man, which is basically what everybody does now, is a zone block thing, which people used to hate so much 10 years ago. But anyway, when you're zone blocking, I don't think footwork is nearly as important, but it just is weird to me. And I'll just leave it at that. It's working. That's fine. I don't know how my wife makes much better coffee than me in the morning, but she does. So I just live with it. Cameron Seldon starting out in the backfield. This is a little bit of a surprise. If you would have told me that Seldon, a wide receiver with speed and ability, would have been the guy that flipped, I didn't necessarily think he would be that guy. However, I do like the fact that Josh Heupel is throwing his weight around a little bit and saying, hey, listen, bud, because remember, coaches used to hate doing this back in the day. They used to hate going to Dominique Stevenson and saying, hey, you're not going to play running back like you did in high school. We're going to move you to linebacker. Fred White, You're not going to play cornerback where you ran a 10-200 meters. You're going to play safety, and we need you to add on about 15 to 20 pounds by next year, okay? I mean, they didn't like doing it back then, but they especially, Caleb, don't like doing it now with the transfer portal. So I don't know how that conversation went, but kudos to Josh Heupel for saying, if you want to be a part of this program and you want to be an impact player, then you're going to have to switch positions.
Yeah, it threw me off because I thought
Me too.
I thought they definitely could have used him more at linebacker or cornerback. Maybe Josh Heupel felt, Cameron Seldon has the Jabari Small build. I think he's more of a total package back, if that makes sense, as opposed to an all-purpose back like Wright or Sampson or a power back like Khalifa Keith, who's not coming till the summer. I think he wants to push Jabari Small. I got no knock on Jabari Small. I thought he was solid last year, but quite honestly, I thought things were laid out for Jabari Small to have a record-setting year last year. Jalen Wright was hurt at the beginning of the year. Dylan Sampson hadn't come on yet, and Small was solid, but you didn't really see him take a 5-yard gain and turn it into a 65-yard gain, if that makes sense.
I don't think they have a special tailback right now.
Right.
Which is, I think that one of the reasons, and if you haven't checked out the video, boy, it was great getting a video at a camp. I thought that was pretty cool. But if you haven't had a chance to check it out, we have a video of one of the top 2 running backs in the nation, depending on who you listen to. But you can certainly check that out. Jarrett Gibson, 5-star running back. That is thanks to our good friend Luke Winstall. He'll be working with us from time to time. But that's a special tailback. That's a guy who takes the 6-yard gain and makes it a 25. That's a guy who takes the 20-yard gain and makes it an 80. Again, like you, no offense to Jabari Small or any other cats on board, but I just don't see that they have that. Maybe with Dylan Sampson, but Dylan Sampson's not going to be in a 25 carry a game type of tailback either.
No, he can't be. He's going to be more like Jalen Wright. And that's why I think they're giving Cameron Seldon some reps at this position. I think, look, we forgot about this because Joe Milton did a lot of things that a lot of us were surprised by in the Orange Bowl. There were a lot of possessions during that game where Tennessee didn't score. And I think Heupel has some concerns there, and that's where you're going to need, I think, more this year more than last year, he wants a running back who can take that 5-yard gain and turn it into a 25-yard gain. I think it's more important this year to have that than it was last year, particularly when there's a question if there's a tight end on board yet that can do what Princeton Fant did between the 20s.
And I'll specifically ask Jacob Ward about some of that. We've joked around about him playing fullback or doing some of those things, but could he? Yeah, I mean, I think he's a great athlete. I think Princeton Fant, considering lateral and everything, was an incredible athlete. That's 4 Downs. It's brought to you by Andy Mason. Andy Mason, realestate.com. Give me 2 minutes. Back with you after this. And why Jay Billis should be replaced by Ron Slay. I'm calling it out right there. Stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker off the Hook Sports. 2 minutes.
Family has been creating jewelry since 1986. Each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Inflation has risen to the highest level in over 40 years, according to the April 2022 U.S. Inflation Calculator. Will your investments provide you the income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings due to inflation? Simply stated, if the cost of goods and services are 8% higher and you're only earning 4% in your investments, that money buys you less of what you need. Right now is the time to act. Call Guardian Investment Advisors today.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here. I want to personally invite you to North Knoxville's newest sports bar and restaurant.
It's Big Orange Phillies, located in Black Oak Center. And yes folks, it's happening in Halls. Big Orange Phillies offers family-friendly environment with homemade meals and the best deli-style subs around. Billiards, darts, jukebox, shuffleboard, and cornhole, and a full bar. We also offer valet parking on weekends and during special events. We even have a covered back patio. It's happening at Big Orange Phillies. We want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your fair.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Every once in a while, I feel affirmed, pleased with my take on a situation. Given your response to our Duke question, is there anybody whinier than Duke? I think that may be the one video on YouTube that nobody disagreed with me or Caleb, that didn't refer to him as maybe the Wolfman at one point or me as just old. So see, the thing is, Caleb can shave. I'm still old. There's not a lot I can do about that. There's only so much Botox and filler, and that's expensive. But then you're checking yourself, Caleb. You're like pulling the shirt down and looking. You look fantastic.
The shirt was a little wrinkled right there.
Sure, was a little wrinkled. That thumbs up button, the like button, we greatly appreciate that. But yeah, the video talking about Duke being whiny really took off. And that leads us, because coming up in the program, we're going to give you a breakdown of Florida Atlantic. And we did get into Kelly Harper deserving her extension now. And also, are there issues in Alabama? I feel like it's up to us. I feel like we are the officiating authority in the SEC to go ahead and call your program out when it's having an issue. So we did that with Georgia. The Georgia fans love it. They're very keen on that when we call out what they're doing wrong with their program and the fact that their program is, well, a little bit out of control. Just a little bit. So go ahead and click that thumbs up button. And if you haven't subscribed, we appreciate that. And now we're going to get to What the H? And it's brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me with no contacts and no glasses. I love it. It is time for What the H?
What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, so here's what Jay Billis said. He was asked on the Colin Cowherd podcast Sunday night and said, quote, that Tennessee Duke game that you're referencing, that was not a basketball game. It was a hockey game. It was officiated like a hockey game. There were fouls that were flagrant fouls that were not called flagrant. I can't understand why. I've talked to several officials about it, and all of them seem to agree that should have not happened that way, but we're seeing that more and more. So many things I want to dive into this very whiny comment that is from one of my favorite commentators, and that's Jay Billis. However, when Duke enters the conversation with Jay Billis, he goes from very reasonable to very, very blue. Very, very blue. So What the H brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, and Taylor Hahn. Local vision done right. They did my LASIK, no contacts, no glasses. It's phenomenal, and they can work on your cataract surgery as well. Or maybe have a relative or someone that needs that. Will know that The eye care is local right there in Knoxville. That's different. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. All right. So first part of it, it was a hockey game. It was officiated like a hockey game. Now, come on. I mean, that's not true. That's an exaggeration. Fouls, plural, that were flagrant fouls that were not called flagrant. I've only got one that I thought could have been flagrant, and that was the elbow to the Duke player's eye that drew the cut. And it's not because it drew a cut. I thought there was some flailing there on was it Uros's part. Caleb, I thought that one could have been a flagrant. It didn't break my heart that it wasn't, and I didn't see fouls plural that should have been a flagrant. What in the world is Jay Billis thinking?
Yeah, everybody's talking about that first foul by Uros that makes him want to say flagrant, and then that physical box out. Like, I'm loving this. How dare Uros Plavsic box out physically trying to get a rebound, guys? When has that ever happened in basketball before? And for the record, Dave, you probably don't listen to him, but Jay Billis tweets out a lot of Young Jeezy lyrics. Now Jeezy, I guess I sound old by saying.
I do know he tweets out the time to go to work, which is a motivator.
And I'm a huge Jeezy fan, but how are you going to tweet out Jeezy lyrics and then be so soft watching a basketball game like this? It was not officiated like a hockey game. He has no data to back that up whatsoever. There was one questionable foul that you could have called a flagrant. If you want to call a flagrant on it, fine. Do you really think that impacts the outcome of that game at all?
Caleb, I came away from that game thinking that's a physical game. That's not the type of basketball game that I really like to watch. But I didn't think that either side was helped by the officiating. Did you? I thought they both wanted to kind of play that style.
Yeah, they both were trying to play physical. Tennessee was just more physical. And it's pretty embarrassing that Jay Billis would do this because I'm with you. I usually like Jay Billis's commentary. I also a lot of times like Dick Vitale's commentary, and I haven't heard him say anything about Duke, but he usually historically has just been all about Duke and worshiping them too. And the stuff just drives me crazy. The media worship of Duke, and Duke had Grayson Allen. Now I'm going to be fair to Jay Billis real quick. Jay Billis did say years ago that Grayson Allen should have been suspended longer than he was when he was playing at Duke. So I will be fair to him about that. But I don't know how you could watch that game Saturday and say it was officiated like a hockey game. It was a physical game, yes. Like you said, it's not the style of basketball you like to watch regularly. It wasn't even close to like what the bad boy Pistons were doing to Michael Jordan in the 80s, though. It wasn't that level of physical.
No. I mean, that would have been those type of fouls every time down the floor. Smoky Mountain Red says, I kind of feel like Uros was being rough was planned, and I think that was a good plan. I do too. I think there was a little wink by Rick Barnes that go out there and be especially physical early. If you get into foul trouble, don't worry about it because it's got a longer bench than Duke. I think the only two people that know that are Uros and Rick, and they're going to keep it that way. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
I think Rick also knew that he wasn't going to want to use Uros that much in the game anyway because Uros wasn't really good enough to handle Duke's bigs, and so I think he trusted Adru more. So I'm totally with you. And again, for people that want to complain about that happens all the time to set a tone. And guys, there's rules in college basketball. You have a foul limit. You can only foul 5 times. There are flagrant foul rules. There's only one foul that Uros committed that you could even question might have been a flagrant foul. Nothing else was a flagrant foul. Teams just played physical. How were the refs supposed to officiate that? They called the fouls when they were there. I mean, did they let him play a little bit? Yes. If anybody, though, got jobbed, it was Tennessee because Roach should have been in foul trouble way before he was. He should have gotten his 4th foul with 12 minutes to go in the game. And they didn't give him that. They gave it to Proctor because they wanted to keep Roach on the court. And that's just ridiculous.
Travis said, didn't Duke have the dirtiest player ever at one point? I assume he's referring to Grayson Allen. You could refer to some of the elbows and the stomping incident by Christian Laettner as well. So certainly, if you combine those together, I mean, who has a more storied history of just being dirty players than Duke? I mean, that is Duke. That is the sanctimonious. I love the word that Caleb picked yesterday. Kind of Duke style. We can stomp on you while you're on the ground, and we won't get a technical, but you probably will. We can throw the elbows, and you can too. But if you do it, it's a flagrant foul. And again, I'm not going overboard on this because I didn't think it was that physical a game where you stop and you do the flagrant foul calls if you're Jay Billis and all that sort of thing. I mean, to me, the one that was flagrant is the one that drew blood. But I will say this. I would much rather catch an elbow than have to worry about Grayson Allen kicking the ball, than have to worry about Christian Leitner stomping on me. And Grayson Allen had a couple of below the belt incidents, didn't he? As well, Caleb?
Yes, he did. He did.
Yes, he was a below the belt guy, kind of Draymond Green style. I don't want people going down there.
No, not at all. No, we're not. He's no Chris Paul, who I don't know if you remember when he was at Wake Forest, just took a blatant shot at someone. Yeah, Chris Paul is one of the most annoying players in professional sports. He's so fake. Sorry, that's just my side rant. But yeah, there was Grayson Allen. Before Grayson Allen, their national championship team, the one that John Shire was on, had Nolan Smith, who was known for being a little chippy too, guys. And I'm with you. I'm not knocking that. For the record, Duke North Carolina rivalry, we always knew this. Duke had even though North Carolina had good coaches, Duke always had the better coach because they had. I would probably say Mike Krzyzewski is the greatest basketball coach of all time. I'd put him above John Wooden just because the different eras he won national titles in. But Duke always had a little bit lesser talent than North Carolina. North Carolina would always have the NBA Hall of Fame talent. Duke would have the NBA role player talent. To kind of make up for that, yeah, they got a little chippy. They would play a little chippy at times to send a message. And all of a sudden, Tennessee does the same thing to Duke, who I think we all agree Duke probably has more NBA talent than Tennessee on this year's team.
Yes.
And so Tennessee does it to send a message, and all of a sudden Duke cries, "It's a hockey game. It's not fair. We're supposed to be the ones to do this." And it's pathetic. It's embarrassing. It's why nobody likes Duke, because they are so sanctimonious. Plus, they got a ton of fans who can never get into Duke who root for them, like you said. Oh, did I lose you, Dave?
No, I got you now. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. I was going to say, yeah, plus Duke has a ton of fans they're sanctimonious, and they have a ton of fans who can never get into the school and have never even been to North Carolina. And it leads to why everybody gets so annoyed by them. Like I said yesterday, there was institutional support for them. The NBA letting Mike Krzyzewski coach the Olympics 4 times. Media members like Jay Billis, who did go to Duke, but still running cover for them all the time. Dick Vitale does too. Doug Gottlieb did. It's embarrassing to watch, honestly. And I think that even drives more people against Duke. I'm not saying they're going to have a scandal like Penn State. They didn't under Mike Krzyzewski. And I don't think Mike Krzyzewski would allow that to happen. But they get the same type.
Interested where you're going here.
No, they get the same type of cover Joe Paterno got before that scandal. Do you remember how much media worship there was of Joe Paterno? As if he was the greatest, moral figure that college football ever had in history, when he never even wore a headset to coach a game.
Yeah, there were a bunch of people who thought that he should keep that job no matter what. But I don't know if Mike Krzyzewski ever going down that road. I think that what you're seeing is that I'll give you the fan bases basically that have an issue with Homer Media, and it is an issue. And I'm telling you that you think you're a head coach, you would want to have Homer Media, but here's what happens. They go too overboard sometimes when they cover you. But Alabama football and Kentucky basketball are number one in the SEC as far as having a Homer Media. If you show up in the school's colors, the press box, you should be thrown out. But then you have a lot of basketball programs, and Tennessee I'm not going to call anybody out, but Tennessee can slip down that road as well, because basketball, just in the nature of itself, you don't go all bunker down mentality, Caleb. You actually, you're talking to the coach kind of off the record each and every day. That's just the way basketball is in the SEC. I don't know if it's that way in the ACC, but I think there's a tendency to give basketball players and coaches a little bit more the benefit of the doubt. And I think when it comes to Homer Media, that Duke is right up there. No question.
Well, it's actually worse with Duke than it is with Alabama football and Kentucky basketball for this reason. I don't think national media is homers to Alabama and Kentucky. I don't. I've seen a lot of criticism of Nick Saban in the past from national media. National media is the homer media for Duke. like people that are supposed to be objective on ESPN run cover for Duke as if they're their PR teams. It's embarrassing to watch. And
that's fair. And they've got a hefty presence in Jay Billis, and then you have Jay Williams on the morning show. So that is a hefty presence. I can guarantee you that those guys, and ESPN in particular, they weren't real happy about losing a Duke in the tournament coverage. By the same token, though, they're carrying the women's tournament. And goodness gracious, we talk about Tennessee and the SEC ending up with ESPN instead of the Fox conglomerate that the Big Ten put together. I am reminded, not to get too off topic here, Caleb, that I think you want to be associated with ESPN because you watch SportsCenter and it's almost as if the women's tournament is as big as the men's tournament in terms of coverage. It is 30 to 40% of an hour-long SportsCenter because they are carrying it. So I go back to the TV contract. I want to be on who's going to showcase me more, and I think the SEC will be more than Fox Sports and all that. But that's a little bit of a sidetrack there, Caleb.
I agree. I actually agree with you on that. I think that there's going to be a lot of benefits. I still don't know how this is all going to play out. I don't know if you saw the story recently that the Big Ten was really preferring to add USC and Oregon, not USC and UCLA, but somebody in there decided rather than add the bigger schools, they wanted to fully corner the LA market. So nobody from LA, so no other network could get into LA. I think Fox wanted to corner the LA market. And so they didn't want any competitors getting into LA.
That, and I wonder if the Trojans said, you got to take the Bruins if you're getting us.
Well, yeah, it was a travel thing. It was a travel thing for them.
I wonder if there was some of that as well. Travis says, I personally never want ESPN on your side. I hate them. I get it, Travis, but I think you do now because I wouldn't know the women's basketball tournament was even going on if it wasn't for ESPN's coverage of it because they carry it. 2 minutes. Why Nick Saban took an awesome shot at Nate Oates. Trouble in Tuscaloosa. This is Off the Hook Sports.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here, Viles Automotive on Callahan Drive. I've been selling cars here in East Tennessee for 27 years. In that time, I've come to realize it's not about the car. It's about you, the customer. So I'm here to take care of you just like family. Good credit, bad credit, you name it, we can get you taken care of. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. We go across the country to get any vehicle that you want. And here at Viles Automotive, we don't believe in fake numbers. We just give you great deals. And as always, we want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
Issues in Tuscaloosa. I'll get to that here momentarily, where it seems like Nick Saban has called out his basketball colleague. Interesting. Final score predictions from ESPN's analysts concerning Tennessee and FAU. Most seem to think that Tennessee will win in that 5-10 range. And I tend to think so as well, although I'm closer to 10 than not. So before we get to the Alabama discussion about wrong place, wrong time, and apparently their basketball coach and Nick Saban see things very differently, their ongoing gun issue. But your thoughts on this FAU matchup as the Lane Kiffin Classic is in full effect this week?
I say watch out. This is not like the Louisiana underdog. Florida Atlantic is top 10 in 3 points made, top 10 in 3 points attempted. They're number 52 in 3-point percentage, but that's still really good because you guys forget there's like 300 and something teams in college basketball. Here's the big part about Florida Atlantic. We talk about Tennessee's depth. Florida Atlantic goes 9 deep. They've got 9 players averaging over 15 minutes a game. Their starting lineup, they have 4 3-point shooters and 1 7-footer underneath the basket. So they actually out-rebound opponents pretty well too. They actually are top 20 in total rebounds per game. So this is a team that can rebound the ball. They shoot well from 3. They can be red hot, and they're deep. That's dangerous. You see why they won the Conference USA tournament. They're 33-3. They needed a lot of luck to beat Memphis, and Memphis blew that game. But that was a Memphis team that had just beaten Houston, who was the number 1 team in the nation when Memphis beat them. So that wasn't like that was a bad team. And you can talk about how they didn't put away Fairleigh Dickinson until the end. And I can't believe Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue. But Fairleigh Dickinson did beat Purdue. And I can't believe Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue, gave Florida Atlantic a fight when, I don't know if you guys know this, they're in the tournament by default. They didn't win their conference. The team that won their conference was not eligible for the tournament this year. And so I just have to say, watch out for Florida Atlantic. This is, I'm assuming Ron Slay's coming on tomorrow. When we talk with him, he's going to be able to break it down a little more. This is not as favorable of a matchup for Tennessee as Louisiana was. And I don't think Tennessee can afford to look ahead to playing Tom Izzo the way I think they did look ahead to playing Duke when they faced Louisiana.
Gosh, I hate to say it, but I mentioned this yesterday. It would be such the Tennessee thing to do to get to this point, and you can get to the Elite Eight for the second straight time and not make it. I mean, that would be a Tennessee thing to do, a Tennessee basketball, thing to do. So that would let just a ton of people down. Have you seen the spread on this game? Because I think it's funny that sometimes you have like a 10 versus a 7 seed, but actually the 10 is the favorite according to Vegas that builds big, huge, monstrous buildings. So what's the spread you've seen on this?
Yeah, that's another concerning sign for you guys. Vegas is not as high on Tennessee. It's 5.5 for Tennessee, which I thought it would be closer to 10 than 5, if I'm being honest with you. And we talked about this with Duke last week, where keeping it at 2.5 signaled that Vegas knew something. Maybe they know something with Florida Atlantic.
Or maybe they're just playing the side that Tennessee's a defensive team and they're going to allow people to stay in it. Just surface logical. I mean, now I always worry that Vegas knows something too. Don't get me wrong. This one seems a little bit more simple. I thought Duke, again, I said this and maybe I'm stupid, but I thought they would be a 5 to 6 point favorite. I'm not surprised that Tennessee is just a 5 with the way they play defense. To me, it's the same thing as Tennessee's football team. If you think they're 7-point favorites over Team X, you probably boost that up to 13 or 14 because they score so many points. So in reverse, I think it's a lot like this. If you think Tennessee's basketball team is 8 and 9 points than FAU, you probably trim a little bit of that because they're not going to have it as many possessions and they like to dictate the pace of play. Smoky Mountain Red said, I have a feeling it could be a blowout from either side. Possibly. A blowout from Tennessee would be huge heading deeper into the tournament. If FAU blows Tennessee out, man, all those good feelings about Duke are gone because you lost FAU, essentially a directional school. You lost a Lane Kiffin school. Yeah, Tennessee doesn't want to go out there and get blown out on Thursday. That would be pretty tough to swallow.
Yeah, you're right. And FAU they have clearly taken on the identity of the culture that Lane Kiffin brought. For their coach to say we have to prepare for Australian rugby to play Tennessee, which he said, that's something Lane Kiffin would have said. Someone on Twitter said, watch, they're going to bring a statue of Lane Kiffin to this game just to troll Tennessee at that point. I mean, I think that they are, which I don't blame them. You're a small directional school in Florida. Why not? Why not do something like that? That's what Danny White did with UCF. He would troll. Remember, he hung a national championship banner when UCF went undefeated.
How about a Lane Kiffin commemorative bottles of mustard or golf balls? They should be giving something away, right? But it's in New York City. That might be tough to find a street corner that you could give stuff away. That's a little bit more difficult to find in the street corner in Boca. My last name's Hooker. I'm very good at finding street corners.
Oh my gosh. That's a great one. Another connection. I just thought about this. I think Brian White is Danny White's brother. Isn't he the athletic director at Florida Atlantic?
I'm going to have to take your word on this. I had to look up when Danny White was first hired by Tennessee and make sure that he wasn't the former quarterback of the Cowboys in the 80s that did nothing. So,
okay. So
is Brian White related? Do we have a tie here?
Yes. Danny White's older brother, Brian, is the athletic director for Florida Atlantic. His brother is Mike White, who's now coaching Georgia. And his sister is Mariah Chappell, and she's the assistant athletic director for SMU. But it is the White Bowl, which that sounds so racist. I shouldn't say that, but
that's terrible. So what is the okay? So how long has he been at FAU?
I'm not sure actually. I need to look this up. But
I mean, is there a Kiffin tie there?
Let's see. He's been there since 2018. March 3rd, 2018 was when he was hired by FAU. So it was after Kiffin was hired.
So he was a part of the group that hired Kiffin to FAU?
No. Kiffin was hired.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought you meant. All right. I was just wondering, does Danny, if Josh Heupel ever goes to the NFL, does Josh Heupel pick up the call and say, hey, bro, what about that Lane cat? What you think of him? Still a part of me that would like for that to happen.
Brian's signature hire was the coach of Florida Atlantic, the current coach, Dusty May. He hired him within a month of being hired at Florida Atlantic. So this is his investment right here.
All right, there we go. It's today's tough question. It deals with tough times in Tuscaloosa, maybe?
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Today's tough question brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. City Heat and Air integrity matters. Might not need a whole new HVAC unit when that weather gets hot. You might just need a part or something else that can save you a lot of money. City Heating and Air Conditioning, integrity matters. City Heat and Air. Nick Saban said he suspended an elite recruit for an incident and said specifically, quote, there is no wrong place, wrong time. Of course, Nate Oates' players have been at the wrong place and the wrong time in a shooting that involved the death of a young lady. Nate Oates is Alabama's basketball coach. Now, you wrote that, and you've told me that you think this was a blatant shot at Nate Oates, who Brandon Miller had borrowed the gun that was used allegedly used in the murder, and they specifically said the term no wrong place, wrong time. Why do you think this is a blatant shot and just not a coincidence, Caleb?
Well, so just so we know, Tony Mitchell's the player that was suspended. It was apparently was arrested for marijuana possession with intent to sell. And I think
talking about the football player.
Yes, the football player. I think it was a blatant shot for this specific reason. I think Nick Saban is very, very angry about the black cloud this has cast over Alabama athletics as a whole. And I think he's very, very worried that this is going to impact the football program to a certain degree. And look, I don't blame him for that. I'd be the same way if I were Nick Saban. So I got no issue with him doing it. So I think I'm not trying to say he's got nefarious intentions. I'd have the same intentions at this point. But what's going on in Alabama right now, you don't think that would be used against Alabama in football in terms of this is a culture within the athletic department. And I think he knows that this is possible. And I think he's trying to nip that in the bud immediately to let everybody know, no, this is not what we do here. This is not the football program. And by the way, Nick Saban has some pull. So don't be shocked if Nate Oates is in a little bit of trouble with the administration after it's very clear Nick Saban's not happy with them.
So are you saying that he would parrot information that he heard, or that he would get Nate Oates in trouble?
I'm saying that, I don't think he'd parrot information that he heard or that he would get Nate Oates in trouble. I just think that this whole point yesterday, this was a little bit of grandstanding to let him know we don't do this at Alabama. We don't do this at Alabama football. And don't compare us with the basketball program. And I think he sent a subtle message to the athletic department, you guys need to deal with Nate Oates. Y'all need to deal with this because you're making us look bad as a program as a whole by not dealing with this situation.
I'm going to actually go in the other direction. I think that he probably was he is far more educated as to the Nate Oates experience and what that basketball program is going through than either of us. So listen, if this were a situation in which the administration came to him and say, I just think you should be aware because you're the most well-known person in the state. I think you should be aware that Nate Oates really did nothing wrong. Here's what happened. This is why we shouldn't have suspended Brandon Miller. I don't think you'd hear a peep out of Nick Saban. I think if they said, man, I'm not sure about the way Oates is handling this whole thing, and you might want to distance yourself, and worse things could be coming out, which could be the case. I mean, at the very least, there's going to be a murder trial, and you've kept your Alabama basketball program front and center at the NCAA tournament, and they're going to continue to be so as long as they keep winning, and different reporters are going to ask the same questions, which is why I said a long time ago that you should just suspend the season and see how this thing shakes out. Now, Alabama fans, jump on me. I'm fine with that. But morally, I think that was the right thing to do. Now, if Alabama survives this, gets through the tournament, wins a national championship, then maybe you're okay with that. But to me, especially in a football conference at a football school, you could have taken a much stronger stand. So I believe that this is somewhat orchestrated. I don't think it's nefarious at all. I just think it's, hey, this is not how we do things. And if you remember, Steve Spurrier at the time wanted to distance himself from some domestic abuse that was happening towards the end of his career. So he would say, hey, if you hit a woman, you're just not on our team. Well, I mean, that was orchestrated. He did that for a reason because other programs were allowing those guys to remain on their program. So I think it's very much like that. I think he wants to distance himself, like you said, but I also can't help but wonder if he's hearing that Oates could have handled this very differently, that this could be a big mess coming. So get away from it as far as you can. Those are my two thoughts.
That's very possible. He could be very privy. Look, we know over the weekend, the New York Times reported, Alabama's denying it, but the New York Times reported that another player was involved in this. And
yet another player.
Yes, another player was there. Alabama's denying it. I don't want to go here, but we kind of have to go here since we're talking about this. Reportedly, the player that was involved that Alabama is saying was not involved was one of the white players on the team. Do you know how bad of a look it is for the school if they were covering for the white player and not the other players, and how much that would be used against them in recruiting?
I haven't really thought of it even by race, to be real honest with you, Caleb. The way I look at it, though, is you have a program that at the end of the day, it is secondary to football. I mean, that's 90% of the revenue in a college athletic budget. Basketball is about 10%. We're talking about SEC schools, not Duke and North Carolina and those. But it to me was exactly what Smoky Mountain Red said. It was a recruiting pitch to to make parents sure they know he isn't like that other coach. Yeah. And I think Nick Saban is the type of guy who's probably not going to like the basketball coach most of the time for a lot of different reasons, but he's got a legit reason not to like him now, because he is continuing through his winning at this point to bring negative attention to the University of Alabama. And Nick Saban didn't want any part of that at all.
Yeah, and I would ask Alabama fans this, because let's take this to its logical conclusion. If more stuff comes out that's problematic, which I'm kind of on your side on this. I think there's more there than we know about right now. So if more comes out and we find out the administration knew about this stuff with Nate Oates and was covering for it overall, that is a black mark for the whole school. That's going to hurt Nick Saban recruiting in football. So I would just ask Alabama fans this. Would you really sacrifice the long-term health of your football program just to go far one season in basketball?
Well, I've said the same thing when Tony Vitello was suspended early in the season. You have to do that because the NCAA's snooping around with the football program. Go ahead and suspend him. Make a statement. It wasn't an important series. Wasn't even an SEC series. But don't think that Nick Saban isn't thinking, man, if the NCAA comes sneaking around, they always find something. The NCAA doesn't show up and just finds nothing. Every program has things they would just as soon hide. So if they show up in Tuscaloosa and they're just looking at the basketball program, could they find something with football? Absolutely they could. At almost any major program, Caleb, wouldn't surprise me at all.
Oh, absolutely. No, they definitely could. And they're not beyond coming down hard based on, this is one thing you could say to the NCAA in favor of the NCAA. They've shown throughout history, they're not beyond coming down on the biggest programs and the biggest coaches in the sport if they can find something on you. Now, their hands are a little bit tied a lot of times with these investigations, but this is the program that has come down. They've come down on Kentucky basketball plenty of times. They're in the Eddie Sutton years. They gave Alabama probation in football in the 2000s. I mean, this is not an institution that's going to turn a blind eye just because you're a major program.
Well, and don't forget this too. You have the NCAA who just added about 40 workers to their enforcement staff. I mean, they're trying to beef that up and bone that up before they just completely get lost and turn into the black hole of just nothingness, because the NCAA is fading away right now. It's the SEC and Big Ten that are taking control of football, and football is the driving chain. But the NCAA is adding people in enforcement. So don't think for a second they wouldn't want to make an example of. That's why I think that it's so important for Tennessee to get their NCAA stuff done. The NCAA at some point, if they're adding 40 staff members, then I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, they at some point are going to want to bust somebody big. And Tennessee would fit that mold. Alabama would fit that mold of just big schools that you could make a statement on and bust somebody big. So I'm not saying Tennessee or Alabama is going to be it, but that's the mindset they're in when you add 40 people, Caleb. You don't add 40 people to make coffee every day.
No, not at all. And let's not forget when you had the I call it the golden age of busting schools in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. I think a lot of that had to do with the NCAA got a backlash when they punished SMU, because a lot of people felt, I think rightly so, that at that time they punished SMU, but they weren't punishing Texas, Texas A&M, and all these other Southwest schools that were doing the same thing. And they responded to that by, like I said, coming hard at Kentucky basketball, coming hard at Alabama football, coming hard at Auburn football. Terry Bowden's first year, the Auburn went undefeated, couldn't play for anything. And they kind of made a statement because of the backlash they got for SMU, because I don't know how you felt. I think the problem with the SMU thing was they came down on SMU, and SMU was still playing players after they came down on SMU.
I think the problem with SMU is they wanted to try out this death penalty thing, and they weren't a big school. I think if Texas had done the same thing, that they wouldn't have come down on them.
Oh, yeah, there's too much money that Texas brings in.
Yeah.
And the thing about death penalties is when you do that, particularly not so much in Dallas, but in a place like Tuscaloosa, do you know how many businesses, restaurants, and hotels suffer if you come down with the death penalty?
Oh, it's huge. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
You really, and Tennessee would be one of those. You can't come down with the death penalty.
You trigger a recession in that city.
What is that?
I said you basically trigger a recession in that city if you do that.
Yep, it's true. Portions of the program brought to you by Zulbeer, xulbeer.com. Man, worldwide award-winning craft beer, worldwide award-winning craft beer, and they have parking downtown. You're going to love it. Great merch as well. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We'll be with you at 10 a.m. Eastern time each and every weekday. Don't forget to download the app. Hit that thumbs up button. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you thinking? He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Off.